Last night, after wrapping up, we got to have a nice group dinner. We had Darren, Dammy, Lance Spencer split a very large bill, and I had one of the best ribeyes I've ever had. And last night when we got back, got to hang out with Amanda Dean, Eddie at Kava Companies, and Eddie Speed, and we came up with an idea that will probably make us tens of millions of dollars. Today's day 2, and woke up early again to play basketball, and 3 hours of sleep was not really optimistic, and well, made some shots today, so other than a blown layup, played pretty well. Don't have any footage, unfortunately, to show you. And today's hot seat day, so we're all gonna share what's worked for us, what hasn't worked for us, what we've learned in the last 6 months, and well, I'm coming for the belt.
So we have this, go to our website, fill out all our information, and have that discovery.
That's good. What do you want to say?
Yeah, so yeah, I have that. It was just funny because I heard you say what's that? I was trying to grab a seat, get settled in.
So Josh Culler just did a video, or did a presentation on like the expectations you need to have on having a team. And a lot of the stuff they talked about was... All right, Chris, so obviously, there's a little bit uncertainty in today's market, and I think a lot of us are here trying to gain a little bit more knowledge so we can be a little more confident, a little less fearful. So before we jump into it, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, Steve, it's good to be sitting here with you today. We arrange debt, mostly institutional debt, for all commercial property types.
Yeah.
So office buildings, storage, warehouse, hospitality, apartment buildings, with all different types of capital.
Yeah.
Banks, credit unions, life insurance companies, Wall Street money. So we broker debt, institutional debt for all commercial real estate property types.
Gotcha. So with prime jumping 3/4 of a point, or the Fed rate jumping 3/4 of a point in one day and that kind of stuff, what are your thoughts on this upcoming market?
Look, so it totally depends on asset types and the type of leverage that you're using, right? So you just mentioned the prime rate, you just mentioned the Fed fund rate. Those are shorter duration instruments, right? Floating rate debt, right? That doesn't necessarily impact the long end of the curve, right? Most of the long-term money out there is priced over the 10-year US Treasury.
Right.
So that's increased a bit, right? But it doesn't necessarily go basis point for basis point with the Fed rate hikes, right? So anybody that's got long-term fixed rate debt on their properties today probably is in really, really good shape.
Yeah.
Right? But what we're definitely seeing is a bid-ask spread between what guys are wanting to put new money out at versus what sellers are expecting, right? So just like you're probably seeing it in the single family space, guys that own these assets 4 months ago were hearing, well, you could sell my property for this, right? And now the buyers, based on their returns, can only pay this. So that usually lags, 3 to 6 months. So right now we're just seeing a slowdown in transaction velocity.
So
right?
Because the way you guys do it in commercial, cap rate is a big factor in the decision, if not the most important factor.
Sure.
And we're talking about the Fed rate directly impacts what people's appetite they're willing to pay. Is that accurate?
That's right. So think of the cap rate as your year one unleveraged return on that asset, right?
Yeah.
So if you buy something at a 5 cap or a 5% unleveraged return on your money, but you can only borrow money at 5 1/4, right? Now you got negative leverage, right? So that same 5 cap at a 3 1/4 rate 6 months ago made all the sense in the world. Right now you got negative leverage. So we got this bid-ask spread going on in the market right now, trying to figure out where this stuff settles out.
Yeah. So how do you feel about all of this that's going on?
It's still too early to tell. Look, I think that good underlying real estate will always be very valuable, right? Core locations, right? Well-operated real estate is always going to be fine, right? But the stuff that's in tertiary markets that might have been over-leveraged, right, with guys that are maybe taking their eye off the ball on operations, that's where I think you're going to see some struggle, right? Fixed rate, long-term debt would have been the solution for those guys, right? But a lot of these guys got addicted to the leverage, right? They wanted the best IRRs for their money. So we'll see if those guys can weather the storm.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people in the real estate space. Can they weather the storm for the next 36 months? What are 2 or 3 things that you might be doing to prepare yourself for the upcoming shifts?
Sure. So I'm a little bit unique. My real estate portfolio is all located in Cleveland, Ohio, where I am, right? It's all very well located, A, B quality stuff, and I use 100% of my own money, right? So I don't use investor money. It's all my money. So if we got a little bit if there's less yield, if I got to take a little less yield for a while, that's okay. It's all got long-term fixed rate money on it, right? So we might take a little bit less yield for a while, but we're very safe. I don't have any investors to answer to, and so we own that. What we're hearing from other guys is we're just adjusting underwriting assumptions. So expecting rates to go up, expecting cap rates to go up on the terminal value, stressing the coverage, right? So we're just being a little bit more thoughtful about what assumptions we're using before we make these investments.
And when you talk about stressing the coverage, you mean as far as the debt coverage ratio? So making sure that you might have a little bit more income required or put more down kind of deal?
That's right. So if you look across your portfolio that you own, right, and you got debt service coverage of 160, right? Industry standard's probably like a 125, right? But you got a little bit less leverage, so you're at a 160. Well, what would my occupancy have to go to, or what would my operating expenses have to inflate to, or where would my rents have to go down to for me to feel safe about this coverage?
Got it.
Right? And if you don't have that coverage, right, then it's probably sweeping cash, right, to pad the operating account while times are still okay.
Yeah.
Right? Making sure we got sufficient coverage in the case something happens.
Got it. And my last question is, we just sat through a bunch of hot seats. What is the one thing that you took away from today that you might go back and implement?
Yeah, so the best thing that I'm going to implement is just take a look across the whole portfolio, right? The stuff that is very risky, right? The stuff that's, unentitled land or stuff that's getting ready for development, right? Speed that up, right? If it's not being executed, right? Let's either get it to the finish line or just shelve it, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't keep throwing good money after bad if a project's not going to pencil because costs are up or rates are up, right? So just looking at the portfolio, seeing what stuff's not cash flowing, and being smart about, are we going to put it on the side? Are we going to sell it, right?
Just do something sooner.
Do something sooner. Yeah, let's act sooner.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Steve. Likewise,
Appreciate
man. Good to see you.
So here are the 2 things that I talk about raising accountability. So here are the 2 things that we've implemented in our organization, and we have not executed this high level. We're still, learning how to walk, but passing responsibility the right way. So for us now, I can no longer say, hey, Xander, I need this. Manny, I need this. Now, that's like drive-by task assignments, right? I think our team members hate us when we do this, by the way. So now, if I'm gonna assign something to somebody, hey, Manny, I need this, he has to be crystal clear on why it's important. Why do I need this? The awareness of the purpose and the consequence if he doesn't get it done. The standard of performance. When this is done, what's it gonna look like to me, right? Because I was like, here's what I want, and he has no idea when I say this is what I want, exactly what I want. Now I can say, here's what I want, and when you're done, this is how we'll know you're done, because this is what it's gonna look like. And then we're gonna have to ask, do you have everything you need to get this done, right? Do you have the resources, the capability, the time, right? Sometimes they have to rearrange priorities, which is okay. But they're gonna tell us like, hey, I can't get what you need done unless you allow me to rearrange some priorities. And the last thing is, a commitment to holding responsibility. So if I say, hey, I need this done, here's why it's important, here's what it's gonna look like when it's done, do you have all the tools and resources you need to get it done? And are you committed to holding it? This is raising accountability on them and me. And by the way, every time since we've learned this, that task didn't get done, whose fault was it? It was my fault. I didn't give them the why. I didn't give them what it's gonna look like when it's done. I didn't ask them if they had all the tools and resources to get the job done the way I wanted it done. And I didn't ask them if they were committed to holding it. Cool. So,
What was your favorite?
actually, I put Lance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I was like, man, the competitor in me is like, man, that was a really good presentation. If I vote for him, he might win. So Matthew, what I wanted to accomplish at this event was answer just a few questions, right? Because there's a little bit of uncertainty. There's something bubbling right now.
Yeah.
And so the first question I wanted to ask you is, what are your thoughts as to what's going on in the market today?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. And I think that's why we're all here this week. Really, we're seeing a lot of people here that I haven't seen for a while. And I think we're all trying to learn that. I think as we see the rates climb and we see it getting more and more difficult to disposition deals, one of the things that we plan on doing is adding more value. I think it could get a little tricky flipping contracts coming up. And so one of the ways we're looking to add value is through the addition of construction. So recently we brought on a COO who has a construction background, and our plan is to take these properties a few steps further and actually do some construction so as to be able to sell them to turnkey aggregators and adding a little more value that way to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the wholesalers in our market. I will say, Pittsburgh's a little different animal, right?
Yeah.
You guys see the change on the front end, and we don't see it until way on the back end. Additionally, while your portfolios and your values were through the roof, ours were just, they were coming up, but we don't see the crazy high highs, and we typically don't see the crazy low lows. So our hope in Pittsburgh is that things remain a little more stable. That being said, we are expecting change. I would be naive to say I knew in what way, but the way we're gearing up is to be able to add more value than being simply a wholesaler by the addition of construction.
And as a great point, I didn't even realize this. There were a lot of new faces I've never met before that have been in CG for some time now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody's looking for answers.
Yeah. So my last question, we just sat in hot seats for about 5-6 hours. What is the one biggest one you took today? Like the biggest thing that you're gonna go and do something with?
Well, my vote was for Lance Wakefield. I thought his presentation was great, and I have a history with Lance, so I'm a little biased. But I think that's something we've been missing. So, and it's such a blind spot when you look at it. We've been focusing on single family, and we've been focusing on multifamily. Why wouldn't we be focusing on people who own multiple single families?
Right.
That's a huge area that why it never registered to me. I've heard it before, but didn't really hit home today until I saw his numbers and the kind of spreads you can get. So I think that's what I'm going to take back and really focus on. Especially, he mentioned Audanic will help you craft that list. Because for me, I'm not a super tech guy. So for me, crafting that list, he said, "Oh, just go on the county site and that's
just call Eli Fisher."
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have is a limiting belief. Like, these guys have a portfolio. They're gonna be savvy. They're gonna be really smart. Why would they ever sell to us? And clearly,
it happens.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
We just wrapped up the hot seats. I got to lead off the day and got to talk about the lessons I learned from a business divorce, and it was really well received, which is good because I was so uncomfortable the whole time. There were 3 presentations that for me, I took a lot from. First was from Lance talking about doing large portfolio deals and how you can add significant margins to your bottom line. There was also Tyler talking about the lessons he's learned from traveling and actually going to do office visits with your whole team at the other person's office. And finally, Lane talking about change management, which is something we don't really talk about, but anytime you're incorporating major change within your organization, it's really important to do it the right way so that people don't totally lose their minds. I got a chance to sit down with my good friend, Matthew Simmons, and also talk to Chris Litzler, who actually is a specialist in funding commercial deals, to see what their thoughts are, what their feelings are on this upcoming shift. So got to learn a lot from them. It's always exciting to sit down with some major power players. Day 2 is done. We're gonna go hit the cocktail hour, and then we're gonna pick it up tomorrow.
Has anyone heard of a turnkey being sold with a U.S. sponsored bond? Pretty interesting. That guy was Jimmy Green. Let's give him a round of applause.
Guys, if you need help with acquisitions and training for your acquisitions, I would make sure that you introduce yourself to this young man. Here you go. Come on in. Come on in. Tighten it up. Act like you like me. Forward. Come on up front, Ashley.
That's 7 years. 3 months. So this is a very different outcome. That's a little bit scary. Because any interest rate hike from here causes price damage. Without a doubt, it's just bad. Okay? Or to prevent sales. So you're going to have a very different market coming up. So what can mitigate the damage? Okay, let's talk about that.
Thank you. It's been an honor to serve you. Guys.
We just wrapped up day 3, and it's exciting because they're gonna announce who the belt winners are. I didn't win a belt, again. But that's not what's important. So we had the housing analyst give us some clues as to what to look for in the shift that we're going through. He's accurately predicted the last few housing crashes before anybody else, and so he gave us a few things to look for that will tell us whether prices are gonna go down or up. So we're not predicting the market, he's giving us just a few things to look at. One of those things, the biggest thing potentially, is whether the government's gonna fight inflation or fight recession. And depending on which one they choose to fight, that's gonna affect the market. Afterwards, we broke for lunch, talked business, talked shop, and got even more ideas for some additional business ventures, business opportunities. And really, at the end of the day, that's the reason why we come. We're catching up with friends, we're networking, we're bouncing ideas off each other, and we're coming up with things to do, to execute for the next 90 days until the next collective genius.